Tours at Eberle are intended by our owner. I don't know, is Gary outside?
He's not here yet.
Okay. Gary wants us to talk about how wine gets made. And the reason is how are you supposed to know? Unless you're in a place where you can see it. I'm going to take that up a notch. I want to show you how Eberle wine gets made. And the reason I distinguish that is because I think you are going to have some exceptional wine today. You're going to have our Chardonnay, and then you're going to have 4 red wines. And they are distinctive in their freshness and in the balance. And I suspect that making well-balanced wine that's not too anything is much harder to achieve than I appreciate, because I've never had to do it. But our winemaker, a young man named Chris Eberle, by the way, no relation to Gary Eberle, the owner. How many Eberles do you know?
I'm an Eberle.
Are you?
I am, but I'm not related either.
Okay, you might
I was going to pretend I was a long-lost cousin.
Yeah, just call him Uncle Gary, you'll be fine.
Exactly. He won't know.
Do you know what Eberle means?
Is it a pig or something? There's
You're close.
a boar. Is it something with a boar?
It is from the southern German, where an Eber is a boar, and when they add leg to the back, it makes it a small wild boar. So,
A small wild boar.
a family logo to be proud of.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's what we're going to be talking about, are the kinds of decisions Chris makes, the things that he does with this stuff to turn it into the wine that you're going to be having today. And the whole intent is to help you to have a better appreciation of what you'll be having. The key is balance in all of Eberle wine. That is Chris's obsession, actually. Balance starts, honestly, out there. When the grapes are ripening, if it stays hot all day and well into the night, we're going to end up with really high sugar levels, which is going to mean really low acidity levels, and we want balance. So God bless Paso Robles, it'll hit 98 today. But tonight it'll probably cool off and be down in the upper 50s by tomorrow morning. So that cooling at night allows the grapes to slow down the sugar production and naturally balance the sugar and the acid, which is just critical in white wine. So Chris decides what to harvest and when. And then he brings it in here and begins the production. This will begin first week of September invariably, no matter what happens during the summer. So the grapes will be dumped into that shaker table, which will push them down, and then they drop into our destemming machine. Have you ever been into grape stems? Don't. It is a miserable experience. We don't want that in our wine. And like most California wineries, we strip the grapes off, making what I call grape soup, if you can picture that. Then if it's going to be white wine, that soup goes into this tube structure. It is a chilling device. It'll take that wine way down to just above freezing as quickly as possible. Apparently that keeps bad biological things from happening to the juice. And it also helps Chris to promote a sense of freshness and fruitiness in the wine. So you're going to have a Chardonnay today that may surprise you. It's going to be fresh, clean, and have nice fruitiness to it, which isn't always the case with Chardonnay. Then it goes up to the bladder press where it's going to be squeezed and then on in for fermentation. That's the whites. The reds are even more direct. They come right out of the destemmer and are pumped right into a fermentation tank. Now, we've adopted the policy, because we do cave tours, we do our cave tours right in the middle of where our production people are trying to work. So we're going to just kind of cruise right through the fermentation room. Let me highlight a couple of things. You're going to see a bunch of big old tanks. The big fat tanks typically are fermenting the red juice. The tall, thinner ones are typically fermenting the white juice. And we'll know that that's happening in September because they'll be all frosty, because they turn on the refrigeration jackets, keeping that white juice cold. So it starts out here, continues in there.
How long is that process, that fermenting process?
2 or 3 weeks. Yeah. Whereas for the reds, it's 5 or 6 days, but they're not cold. And what's happening in the red tanks is they'll pump the whole soup in, and it will separate, so you end up with a thick pool of barely pink juice. and another cap of deep purple mashed up solids floating on top. They pump the juice up over that cap, spray it out, and let it percolate. It sounds like we're making coffee, doesn't it? It's the same process. We are pulling out of the solids, specifically the skins, tannins, flavor and aroma compounds, and color. And that's how you turn it into red wine. The question becomes, when do you stop? And I'll talk more about that when we get down below. But let's go take a look now. So in the past, in September and October, when it's really hot out, they have the door open and it was hot and humid. Our production people are hard workers. And then come on down. So in those tanks, the whites will be in their first couple of weeks of September, and then reds for the rest. We'll have Syrah and Cabernet in those tanks in November. So they pump up, spray it out, let it percolate down. They'll do that twice a day, once for about 25 minutes in the morning, once about 25 minutes in the afternoon, and then they stop after 7 to 10 days. And here's why. While this is like making coffee in the tank, it's also like making a cup of tea. Have you ever left the bag in too long? What do you get? Bitter, tannins, and a really strong cup of tea. Some people like that, and there's nothing wrong with it. Some people like a big, bold, heavily extracted Cabernet Sauvignon. Have you ever had a California Cab that just about peeled the enamel off your teeth? They're out there, and they're not hard to find. But you don't have that experience here, because Chris limits the extraction to that 7 to 10 day period. During that time, he's got all the color he wants you to have. Scads and scads of byproducts of fermentation are created. Many of them we can smell and taste. So he's got all of that. And then he's got what I call an appropriate level of tannins, that chemical that at the back of your mouth can kind of dry it out. You expect more tannins in a Cabernet than you do, say, in a Grenache. Okay? But you can also over-extract and bring in way too many tannins, way too much bitterness, and way too much heaviness. So what you're really going to see today in your tasting will be lighter bodied wines, a little bit lighter on the extraction, but the whole intent is to give you undisguised access to the flavors and aromas of the wine. That's what's happening here. And I'll let you decide how well that's working, but I think I already have an idea what you're going to think. So when this is done, it is just looks beautiful, it smells fabulous, and it tastes horrifying. It is just not fit. Ladies, you may know that red wine is like men. It needs time to mature and develop in a barrel. So come on down. It would appear that oak barrels must be awfully important to wine production, wouldn't you say? We have, I'm told, about 2,000 of them here. And I will tell you, the big, irreversible decisions about what is going to become wine happen up there. It happens when they harvest. It happens by the yeast Chris chooses for the fermentation, the intensity and the duration of the extraction. You cannot reverse those, so he better get it right. That's why these are so important, because these are how he fine-tunes the eventual result that you'll be having today. Without understanding key things about oak barrels, you can't really understand your wine. For example, these barrels here on top are really good examples of what we call new oak. And the reason we call them that is because they're oak and they're new. Am I getting too technical here? It's early. If you've ever had a sense of oakiness in your wine, that was evidence of lots of exposure to new oak. That's how you do that. You're not going to have that here at Eberle because Chris and Gary Eberle both don't want you to have that. Once again, Chris wants you focusing on the subtle flavors and aromas in the wine, not the barrel. And so using new oak, it's kind of like the herbs in the marinara sauce. You want it in there. You don't want people focusing on that. Okay. And so Chris has to balance, and there's that word again. He balances the amount of new oak with neutral oak. These guys up here, and frankly, the majority of the barrels you will see today are neutral. They just look older. They've been new oak for a couple of seasons. Now they don't have much in terms of the oakiness in them, and so they don't add anything flavor or aroma-wise. They are, however, perfect storage containers for the chemistry that's going on. This is all chemistry here. You want to hear all about it? You're not going to get it from me. My specialty in this industry is in wine drinking. Okay, so I don't care about the science, but the winemakers have to. The wine is chemically converting itself into the stuff Chris is going to want you to have in another year or two, and the red wine will continue doing it in the bottle. And so balance of neutral and new is going to result in some pretty good stuff, and I'm going to take you down here and show you how that works. But first, I want you to get a peek at our VIP tasting room. We've got somebody coming down in about an hour or so. They've paid $50 for a reservation. They'll meet their server who will spend the entire time with them. They'll have a private tour of the caves and then go on in there. They'll have a wonderful charcuterie tray of really nice cheeses and dried fruit and other good yummy stuff. It looks like they're having a Reds only flight, and all I can say is they ain't nobody at Eberle today having what they're having. This is intended to be very, very special, top of the line stuff. And all I can tell you is this is a wonderful way to celebrate like a birthday, an anniversary, release from prison, or Thursday.
Well, you said they're not coming down for an hour, right?
No, I know what you're thinking. Come on, we'll go take a quick
Put the corks back on the bottles.
So very often when it's just a couple, they're celebrating something. And this is a good way to do it. I will tell you, everybody seems to love this. Now I'm going to bring you around and show you how Chris uses these barrels to turn out the wine. Are you familiar with Sangiovese? It's the base grape Chianti you've never had. This whole wall is our 2021 harvest, so that just last October, Sangiovese. I will tell you, Chris makes an exceptional Sangiovese. There's no reason to think this won't be exceptional too, but this shows you how he does it. So the grapes come in, he already knows what's coming in because he's the guy who bought them and decided when to have them harvest. They come in, he already has a vision in his mind of what he'd like an Eberle Sangiovese to be. But even so, he monitors it all the way through the fermentation process. And at some point early on, he comes up with an idea of where that vile tasting wine can go. So, do you see new oak on this wall? It's all on top, isn't it? Yeah. The other two rows are neutral, and this represents what you see with Eberle wine. New oak, yes, controlled or balanced with neutral oak, and there's always more neutral oak than there is new oak. That's how he keeps you from tasting oak rather than the wine. Furthermore, we have French Hungarian, French, and 2 American oak barrels. And wherever the trees were grown, they're gonna have a different character, which is understandable. And so what Chris has to do is take that vision of the wine he wants and see, will the character of American oak add to that? Will the character of French oak combine? And apparently the Hungarian oak, just enough to add a nice touch. This is nothing less than a recipe. It really is. And if he's right, in 16 months, we're going to have a really good Sangiovese. If he's wrong, there are 300 bottles of wine in every single barrel, 24 cases. He doesn't get to be wrong. He really doesn't. He's got to be right from the start. And then he's got to continue that balance that begins up there, down here. And what we're going to do right now is send you back upstairs and see if he's any good at this, okay?
So 1 barrel is 300 bottles?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it, does it? But there's no space in there. It's just all the wine. Yeah, I will tell you this. In Paso Robles, I'm pretty sure there are no dumb winemakers and very few humble winemakers. You got to be a confident rascal to even consider doing this. And like I say, you're going to get to go find out how good Chris is. So come on upstairs. You wouldn't think so. Chris was a agriculture business major at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo right around 2005. Came to work here doing production and rose to be our assistant winemaker, and then decided he wanted to go to make wine. So this guy went all over the world. Northern Hemisphere, do a harvest, then Southern Hemisphere, do a harvest. So he doubled his experience. And in his line of work, how else do you learn what the yeasts are going to do? How else do you learn what the barrels are going to do? You have to make wine, and it is something of an apprenticeship. If you're lucky, you get to learn from someone who is really a master, and that's really when you become a winemaker. I like to stop people here to give you a chance to kind of catch your breath coming up the ramp, and I've noticed when I do that, people end up looking over here at the hardware. The top row, I know those look like handcuffs. All I can tell you is that's entirely different tour. The 50 Shades of Eberle tour is a lot of fun, but that's just not what we did today. So, shall we go on up and do some tasting?
I'm driving down an empty freeway, no waiting for the light to change. I'm seeing the sunrise behind